I think this is a 90-day pause, but it isn't really clear how we get past the real structural issues. So I think what we've done is as you said earlier, we've kicked the can down the road. Both sides can declare a win. I think from the Chinese perspective, this is an ideal outcome because some of the pressure short-term is reduced, but also they get to talk. And the Chinese love to talk. They love, they've been having dialogues with the U.S. for decades. And also, during this 90-day period, in addition to negotiating with the U.S., the Chinese will be working every possible lever they can find to lobby, find ways to lobby down any sort of potential negative outcomes if there isn't a deal at the end of 90 days. And I think, as Eunice said earlier as well, there should be no doubt that after 90 days, the Chinese will request some sort of extension, and I think they'll probably get it.
Yeah, that's what Eunice said that jumped out the most to me. If they seek an extension and they get an extension, do we wind up in the situation where the Chinese are always hoping not only to talk, but also to drag things out over an extended period of time? You lose momentum. It's harder to get back to the point where you say, OK, we're really going to put your feet to the fire. Is that their end game?
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I mean, in some ways, it's analogous to, say, the maximum pressure campaign in North Korea, where it was working, then the U.S. starts talking, and now it's really difficult to keep the momentum going. I think you're going to see the same thing with the pressure on the Chinese. To President Trump's credit, I think he has pushed this issue with the Chinese more than any of his predecessors, and I think he certainly has diagnosed correctly, I believe, many of the problems, although, you can certainly argue with his prescriptions and the tariffs. But so now the question is, has the U.S. lost momentum? And so as you said, the Chinese, will they be able to drag it out? And ultimately, remember, this 90-day extension gets the U.S. and China past two important holidays: Christmas here, the Chinese Lunar New Year in China in February. When the 90-day period ends, we're pretty much at the start of the U.S. presidential election campaign season. And so, what are the domestic pressures going to be that maybe have President Trump decide that he needs to lay off a little bit on some of the threatened tariffs or other actions?
What does success look like?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't think that's well defined, because ultimately, some of the demands that the U.S. have made, which are very reasonable from the U.S. perspective, really cut to the heart of the Chinese system, and in some ways pose an existential problem for the Chinese Communist Party and its rule. And so, ultimately, success, I think it also depends on which constituency you're talking about. Success from the market's perspective is probably something like what we have, which is a ceasefire, and then investors and traders are going to have to live with the daily drip of headlines of up or down, or they're meeting or they're not meeting, kind of like death by a thousand cuts in the markets. But I think ultimately, it's not realistic to expect that the Chinese are going to meet all the U.S. demands, and certainly not that they're going to agree to make any of the real structural changes the U.S. is demanding anytime in the near future, especially not in 90 days.